He was hit with 87 parking tickets on land where no vehicle had ever been parked. The HOA, driven by automated drones and unchecked power, mistook a rainwater barrel for a car and filed a lien without question. But Ronnie Miller fought back with one video and a quiet determination that turned everything upside down. And just wait until you hear how this unbelievable story unfolded. And why, in the end, justice finally won. Ronnie Miller wasn't a man who asked for much. After 22 years in the fire service and a spinal injury that left him walking slower and sleeping less, he packed up everything he owned, bought a piece of dusty land in Central Texas, and decided to live simply. His days were quiet, sometimes too quiet, but peaceful. And in Ronnie's world, peace was a kind of victory. He didn't have neighbors close by. The ranch sat on the edge of a long-forgotten HOA development project that had never fully materialized. There were a few dirt roads, some signs that had faded under the Texas sun, and one locked gate with a rusted keypad. No garage, no asphalt, no visitors, and no car. Ronnie hadn't driven since the day he sold his old Ford pickup back in 2016. Between pain meds and slow reflexes, he figured he was better off letting his friend Joe from town bring him groceries once a week. Which is why the envelope in the mailbox that Tuesday stopped him cold. White, crisp, official looking. The kind of letter that doesn't come from friends or family. The top read, Clear Valley Homeowners Association. Ronnie raised an eyebrow. He remembered the name vaguely, some kind of administrative body mentioned in his closing documents when he bought the property. But in 8 years, he'd never received a single letter, call, or visit from them. Until now, he opened the envelope at the kitchen counter, still in dusty boots. Inside was a violation notice, unauthorized vehicle parking. Fine, $425. This is an official notice regarding your non-compliance with Clear Valley HOA regulations. Continued failure to correct this violation will result in further action. He stood there for a full 30 seconds, staring, then laughed. It was a quiet, disbelieving laugh, the kind that rises when something makes no logical sense. It felt like opening your fridge and finding a traffic ticket inside. Ronnie didn't even have a driveway. What were they talking about? He figured it was a one-off error, some mix-up in the system. Maybe they sent it to the wrong address. But 3 days later, another envelope showed up, then another, each one more assertive than the last. By the end of the second week, the violations were arriving daily, multiple at a time. Some had 3 or 4 citations stapled together. The language grew colder, more aggressive. The totals climbed. Violation #17, violation #23, violation #40. Each incident listed a different date and time, often at night. Sometimes multiple in the same day. Each came with fines ranging from $200 to $600. Some even included administrative processing fees. None of them included a photo. Not a single one offered proof. There was no contact person, just a P.O. box, a website, and an automated phone system that looped back to the main menu. By the 14th day, the grand total was printed at the bottom of the page in bold, blocky font. Outstanding balance, $38,050. And then came the final envelope, a heavier one, certified mail, stamped in red, legal notice, lien filed. Ronnie sat down before he even opened it, already sensing what was inside. The letter confirmed it. The HOA had filed a lien on his property due to unresolved violations and non-payment. In other words, they had put a legal claim on his land, his ranch, over parking violations. Violations for a car that didn't exist. It didn't matter that there were no photos. It didn't matter that he'd never been contacted by a real person. And it especially didn't matter that he hadn't owned a vehicle in nearly a decade. Ronnie looked out the window at the long stretch of dirt and dry grass beyond the gate. Nothing there, nothing had ever been there. And yet, on paper, in the HOA system, he was now officially non-compliant, delinquent, and in danger of losing the one thing he had left. It didn't feel like a ticket anymore. It felt like something was moving against him, quietly, automatically, without logic, without pause. And he had no idea just how far it was going to go. At first, Ronnie tried to explain it to himself. Maybe someone parked near the fence for too long. Maybe a neighbor's truck accidentally rolled across the boundary line. He even considered the possibility that a delivery driver had pulled onto his land without asking. But those theories didn't last long, because Ronnie remembered something no one else seemed to consider. His property was locked, always had been. A rusted iron gate stood at the only entrance to his land, secured by a digital keypad. The code hadn't been changed in years, mostly because no one else ever needed it. His friend Joe, the only person who visited regularly, always called ahead. No one else ever came out this far. There were no tracks in the dirt, no tire marks, no signs of intrusion. The land was untouched. And besides, Ronnie hadn't owned a vehicle since 2016. Not even a four-wheeler, not a tractor, not a bike. The insurance, registration, title, all gone, sold or expired nearly a decade ago. He kept to himself. He had nothing to park. So how could he be getting dozens of citations for unauthorized parking? The HOA notices didn't help. Each new envelope followed the same pattern. A bold warning at the top, a violation number / a fine. A vague reference to GPS coordinates. A note that read, evidence on file accessible upon formal request. But no photo was ever included. No timestamp, no detail, just numbers. The violation sounded official, almost scientific. Captured 7:43 a.m., Zone 4B, coordinates logged, but offered nothing concrete. Ronnie didn't even know what Zone 4B meant. He went online, tried to find the HOA website. It looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. There was no contact form, only a P.O. box address and a phone number that went straight to voicemail. A looped message with 3 menu options and no real human on the other end. He left a message anyway. Polite, clear, calm. Hi, this is Ronald Miller, Lot 18C. I've received multiple notices for vehicle violations, but I don't own a vehicle. I'd appreciate a call back so we can clear this up. No response. He called again the next day. And the next. Then he sent a certified letter. Still nothing. Weeks passed, but the letters didn't stop. Instead, they became more assertive, citing continued non-compliance, escalation of enforcement procedures, and potential legal actions. They added administrative fees, claimed repeat violation status, and warned of collection referrals. What began as a curiosity, something Ronnie thought could be fixed with a phone call, was starting to feel like something else entirely. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, but a machine with no brakes, a system designed to keep issuing violations faster than a person could stop them. And the most unsettling part, there was no one on the other side, no name to write to, no person to reason with, just envelopes, demands, and silence. Ronnie stood on his porch one morning, staring out at the empty patch of land where no car had ever stood, and asked out loud, "What exactly am I being accused of? And how do you prove you didn't do something that never happened?" It was the first time the ranch didn't feel peaceful. It felt vulnerable. The drive into town wasn't easy. Ronnie had to ask Joe to take him. His back didn't handle car rides well, and the whole way there, he kept rehearsing what he was going to say, trying to sound firm, but respectful, calm, but clear. He brought the letters with him, neatly organized in a worn leather folder, hoping someone, nay, anyone, would finally listen. The office was in a beige building wedged between a dentist and a tax service. No sign on the door, just a printed sheet taped to the glass. Clear Valley HOA Administrative Office by appointment only. Inside, the air was cold and flat, the kind of chill that comes from fluorescent lighting and old air conditioning. A front desk stood empty, but through a frosted window, a voice called out, "You can come in." Ronnie entered a small, sterile room with gray carpeting and metal filing cabinets. Behind the desk sat a woman in her late 50s, thin, sharp glasses, hair pinned with the precision of someone who liked rules. A nameplate read, "Shirley Harvey, Compliance Coordinator." She didn't smile, just looked up, blinked once, and said, "Lot number?" 18C, Ronnie replied. "Ronnie Miller." She typed something into her computer without looking at him again. "You're here regarding enforcement activity?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, holding back a tremor in his voice. "I've received over 80 citations for vehicle parking violations, but there's a mistake. I don't own a vehicle, haven't for years." She didn't react. Instead, she opened a drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the desk. Inside were printed copies of violation reports, one for each day. They were all nearly identical. Date, location, GPS coordinate, offense code, fine amount. Some had red stamps. Escalated. Second notice. Property and lien process. Ronnie looked up. Sorry, there must be a misunderstanding. I live alone. No one's been on my property. There's a locked gate. This has to be a mistake. Shirley nodded slightly, but it wasn't agreement. It was the kind of nod that came before a pre-rehearsed line. It's all automated, she said. We use third-party enforcement. Drone patrols collect data, our system flags irregularities, and citations are issued electronically. If you believe this is an error, you'll need to file a formal dispute in writing. There's a form on our website. Ronnie stared at her. But I don't have a car. His voice cracked. There's no one parking there. No driveway. Nothing, just dirt and weeds. There's not even a road in. She looked at him for the first time, not with sympathy, but with mild impatience. Then perhaps someone is parking on your land without your consent. The words hung in the air, not as a question, not even as a possibility, just a line. Another entry in the script. Ronnie stood there, folder in hand, unsure what to say. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, not from anger, but from disbelief. Not once did she offer to check. Not once did she question the system. It didn't matter that he hadn't owned a vehicle in almost a decade. The computer said he was guilty. And that was enough. He left the office without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing the chill inside. Out in the parking lot, the sunlight felt harsher than usual, the air heavier. As Joe pulled up to pick him up, Ronnie sat down slowly in the passenger seat and stared out the window. He didn't say a word the whole way home, because this wasn't just about fines anymore. It was something deeper, a structure that didn't care if it was wrong, a system that couldn't see him, only his file. And for the first time, Ronnie began to understand. He wasn't dealing with people. He was dealing with a machine. Ronnie followed the instructions. He filled out the official dispute form, printed a copy of every citation, wrote a letter explaining, in detail, that he hadn't owned a vehicle since 2016 and mailed everything certified. Then he waited. Days turned into weeks. No reply, no confirmation. Just more envelopes, more fines. And then a different kind of letter, heavy, legal. Inside, default judgment, non-compliance. According to the HOA, Ronnie had failed to respond, and the lien on his property was now active. He stared at the document. He had the mail receipt, the proof. But it didn't matter. No one had opened it. The system didn't need to be right. It just needed to mark a box. Out of options, Ronnie hired a lawyer. Mark Siebert, sharp, confident. $200 an hour. At first, Mark believed it would be simple. A correction, but within 2 weeks, even he started sounding less certain. It's all automated, he said. They use drone footage, GPS logs, auto-generated citations. Getting a reversal without their cooperation is tricky. The legal bills piled up. Ronnie's pension started shrinking fast, and the lien, still there, still growing. So he turned to something else. Late one night, sitting on his porch, Ronnie hit record on his old laptop. No script, no editing. I don't own a car. I never parked anything. But now they want my land. He called the series Ranch Life Without Rights. At first, barely anyone watched. A dozen views here, a comment there, just a man talking to the camera, telling a story no one seemed to believe, until one viewer saw it and shared it. Ronnie didn't expect much from his videos, just a place to talk, let it out, feel a little less invisible. But someone was listening. One evening, a Reddit user named Chris from Austin stumbled across Ronnie's channel. Chris, a law student and HOA critic, shared the link with a short caption. This man got 87 parking tickets from an HOA. He doesn't even own a car. He posted it to 2 subreddits, Our Legal Advice, where people go to unpack complicated cases, and Homeowners from Hell, a community built on real HOA nightmares. At first, it was just upvotes, a few dozen, then a few hundred. Within 24 hours, it hit #1. The internet reacted fast and loud. People were shocked, outraged. Some thought it had to be satire. But then came the screenshots, the legal papers, the video clips. It was real. The thread exploded with comments. This can't be legal. Where's the oversight? Tits. I have a similar story from my HOA in Arizona. Can someone help this man sue? And someone did. Multiple attorneys, some from Texas, others from out of state, began messaging Ronnie directly, offering pro bono help. Journalists picked it up. A legal podcaster covered the case in a full episode, and then local TV called. KTXW Austin, a regional news station, aired a 2-minute segment. Disabled veteran fined 87 times by HOA for parking on land he doesn't use. The headline did its job. It spread. Fast. Within 48 hours, Ronnie's inbox was full. Emails from reporters, messages from other homeowners, offers from civil rights groups. People wanted to help, but more than that, they wanted answers. And for the first time, Ronnie wasn't just a case number. He was a headline, a symbol, a warning. He went from being an unknown rancher with a quiet voice on a porch to the face of a broken system, too automated to care. He didn't ask for it. But people were listening now, and they weren't going to stop. Once the media storm hit, the HOA finally responded. Pressured by legal scrutiny and public attention, they reluctantly handed over the so-called evidence against Ronnie Miller. Boxes of printed reports, digital files, drone footage logs. Ronnie and his legal team sat down, expecting to see something. Maybe a blurry photo of a truck. Maybe a neighbor's vehicle crossing the property line. Maybe some kind of misunderstanding involving a visitor, a contractor, anything. Instead, they found something else entirely. A metal rainwater tub. That was it. Sitting behind Ronnie's tool shed, the wide galvanized barrel, designed to catch rain runoff, had a slight curve in its shape and a metallic surface. It stood about 3 feet tall. From above, at just the right angle in low morning light, it could vaguely resemble the hood of a small car, at least to a drone, running automated pattern recognition software. Ronnie stared at the first image. There was no vehicle, no tires, no shadow that even suggested movement, just the tub, every single time. According to the timestamps, the drone passed over Ronnie's property once every morning, scanning for violations. Each scan triggered the same response. Object detected, shape, rectangular. Material, reflective. Status, suspected vehicle. For nearly 3 months, the HOA's system flagged that tub as an unauthorized parked car, and each time it auto-generated a violation. No one ever reviewed the footage. No one ever asked, does this make sense? The system didn't care about context, only shapes and coordinates. There was no oversight, no appeal process that led to a human. Just automation, repetition, escalation. It wasn't personal. In some ways, that made it worse. Because if it had been personal, at least there would have been someone to argue with, someone to explain, someone to hold accountable. But this was a closed loop. A drone saw a tub. The software called it a car. The system called it a crime. And the man who lived there became collateral damage. Ronnie folded his hands and looked at the stack of printed violations, 87 in total. Each one backed by an image of the same silent, unmoving barrel. He didn't speak for a while, but when he finally did, he said only one thing. It was never about the car. It was about the fact that no one ever looked. By now, Ronnie's story had reached far beyond Texas. It was no longer just about one man and a rainwater tub. It had become a case study, one that exposed how easily technology, when left unchecked, could turn everyday citizens into targets of automated punishment. That's when a civil rights law firm based in Austin stepped in. They'd handled cases involving wrongful surveillance, misuse of private enforcement tech, and due process violations. Ronnie's situation, a lien filed based on drone misidentification with no human oversight, was more than unusual. It was unconstitutional. But Ronnie wasn't the only one. When word got out, more homeowners came forward. At first, a few, then dozens. Each had received citations they couldn't explain, notices that didn't match reality. Some were fined for grass height that had already been trimmed. Others, for violations on properties they hadn't lived in for years. In total, 42 homeowners joined the lawsuit. What connected them wasn't the specific violation. It was the process, the silence, the automated punishment with no real path to defend themselves. The suit targeted both the HOA and the third-party enforcement contractor. The argument was clear. The system penalized citizens without evidence, and the organizations behind it profited from silence. The case moved quickly. The facts spoke for themselves. Drone logs, misidentifications, unopened appeals, ignored disputes, auto-signed warnings. Within weeks, a Texas district court issued a ruling. All citations issued to Ronnie and the 42 other plaintiffs were voided. All liens were ordered removed within 10 business days. The HOA's contract with the enforcement firm was declared invalid. Ronnie was awarded $55,000 in damages, not just for the fines, but for emotional distress, legal costs, and the risk of property loss. The enforcement company lost its operating license in the state of Texas. And one more thing, Shirley Harvey, the woman Ronnie had met at the HOA office, the face of cold procedure, resigned the following week. An internal audit of the HOA was launched. Board members were summoned for review. The system they had trusted, automated, unaccountable, and deeply flawed, was now under the microscope. For Ronnie, there were no cameras in the courtroom, no dramatic music, no applause, just a quiet sentence from the judge, a firm nod, and the knowledge that he was finally heard. Not just as a file number, not as a violation code, but as a person. And for the first time in a long time, the silence worked in his favor. Ronnie didn't leave. He didn't sell the ranch. He didn't cash out and disappear into the hills or use his settlement to start over somewhere new. He stayed. Because this land, these 20 acres of quiet, wind-worn Texas soil, was never just property to him. It was his line in the sand, his reset, his peace. And now, it was finally his again, clean, clear, and unchallenged. The chickens still wandered lazily near the fence line. The wind chimes on the porch still sang the same uneven tune. The same rusty gate creaked open at sunrise and shut at night. And behind the shed, exactly where it had always been, stood the rainwater tub that accidentally triggered 87 violations. Ronnie didn't move it. He didn't even repaint it. Because the point wasn't to forget what happened. It was to own it. Once the legal battle was over, Ronnie paid off every cent of his attorney's fees without hesitation. No drama, no hesitation. Just a firm handshake, a quiet thank you, and a feeling in his chest that hadn't been there in a long time. Relief. He could have stopped there. He could have gone back to porch coffee and watching storms roll in across the flat horizon. But something lingered. Not anger, not bitterness, but responsibility. Because if this happened to him, a man with no car, no traffic, no driveway, who else was quietly being buried under paperwork and silence? So Ronnie took what was left of his $55,000 in damages and did something unexpected. He launched a nonprofit, Land Shield, a small independent platform aimed at helping homeowners navigate the maze of HOA law. No glossy branding, no huge staff, just a website, a downloadable toolkit, a list of verified attorneys who offered first consultations for free and step-by-step guides on how to file appeals, respond to citations, and hold HOA boards accountable. There was a place for stories too, a section titled, "You're Not Alone." And the stories came. Emails, DMs, letters in the mail. Some were angry, some scared. Some just needed someone to listen. Ronnie answered as many as he could. He didn't think of himself as an activist, or a founder, or a symbol. He was just someone who'd been through it and come out the other side. The ranch, meanwhile, stayed exactly as it had always been. He didn't modernize it, didn't add cameras or high fences. He still rose early, fed the chickens, walked the perimeter, and listened to the wind move through the brush like it had before any of this started. But there was one small change. In the corner of his tool shed, behind a stack of old shovels and a broken ladder, he placed a metal lockbox, simple, heavy, gray. Inside, he stored every document from the case, the drone footage stills, the violation notices, the dispute letters no one opened, the legal filings, the news articles, the HOA's final settlement, all of it. A complete archive of what had almost cost him everything. On the lid, he taped a plain white label with two simple words, Exhibit A. He never opened the box. He didn't need to, but he kept it, just in case the system came knocking again, for him or for someone else. And in the stillness of the Texas evening, with no letters in the mailbox and no court dates on the calendar, Ronnie leaned back in his chair, listened to the wind, and finally, let it all be quiet. Ronnie Miller never wanted attention. He didn't set out to lead a movement. He never asked to be on the news or become the headline in a legal journal. He never imagined that videos filmed on a porch with the sound of chickens in the background would echo across the country. He just wanted to be left alone. What started with a single envelope, a fine for a car that didn't exist, spiraled into something far larger. A fight he didn't choose, but one he refused to ignore. And in standing his ground, Ronnie became something he never expected. A voice, not a loud one, not rehearsed, but a voice that cut through the noise because it came from a real place. After the case was closed, after the last letter was shredded, and the last court date had passed, people continued to reach out. They called, they wrote, they visited the Land Shield website. Some asked for help. Others simply said, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." And when asked in interviews what kept him going, through months of silence, false charges, and legal threats, Ronnie usually gives the same answer. All it takes is one false accusation and silence to lose everything. But sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one story, to change the system. He says it without bitterness, not like a man who wants revenge, but like someone who understands the weight of being believed after being ignored for too long. Ronnie still lives on his ranch. He still rises early, drinks coffee with two hands wrapped around the mug, and watches the sky change color at dawn. He still fixes the gate himself when the hinges stick. He still hears the wind chimes when the breeze picks up, the same ones that hung there long before the drones came. And somewhere out there, on forums and in inboxes, his story still circulates. Not just as a cautionary tale, but as proof that one person, without power, position, or platform, can stand up to something bigger, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. And somewhere in the wide, dusty stillness of Central Texas, where the horizon feels endless and the air carries more memory than sound, that voice remains, steady, clear, undeniably human, and still echoing.